Alrighty, well, aloha there, and we are into Vice Waypoint. I wonder why. Okay, yeah, it should be here. While running and such. And, yeah. At least here, in this page, it's actually showing the most recent video game related articles for Vice. Even though they're so and so related video games, it's something about it. Like, top one looking through is the Halo TV series is an empty fantasy of a good war. Halo's politics has never been particularly interesting, but they have never been as loud as they are in Paramount Plus TV show. The image of Master Chief here. And yeah, there's other articles here. Come watch the movie that inspired The Thing with Waypoint. Wonder why it's related to video games, but anyhow, how a citizen sleeper turns stress into intimate storytelling, video game related. But yeah. And then Waypoint Radio reviews the very odd Halo TV show. And then yeah, you have articles relating to such and such. Activision, yeah, Evil Dead. Okay, oh yeah, Dark Zone, Game Unit. Raven's off. I'd rather go with the first one and see how this related to video games, because the other one about plugging in their radio podcast, that's something. But yeah, Waypoint Games by Vice. The Halo TV series is an empty fantasy of a good war. Yeah, by Renata Price from May 27, 2022. So when the first season ended. Let's see how that goes. I have not watched the show, so let's see, Master Chef here. At least his armor is not that artificial looking. It looks a bit realistic to an extent. I am more bothered with this pen under here. I don't recall in any of the iterations he actually had the pen on his right side chest. Anywho, the Halo fantasy exists as three distinct entities at once. The first is the background hum in the lives of people who do not play the video games but do see the advertisements, people who could not tell you that the robot's man's name was Master Chief, but do feel a vague sense of recognition when he appears on posters and TV screens. The second is an unpopular first-person shooter, one where Master Chief shoots aliens for several hours set to a bombastic score, one where you spend countless hours hanging out with your friends in custom forged maps, or even play big team battle in compete goofy ways. Yeah, this guy spent some good times with Halo LAN parties. And at least hear about the freaking soundtrack, because I mean, man, Halo 3 ODST, that had a baller ass soundtrack. Anywho, the final 3 is as a sci-fi universe that has been crafted over the course of 8 mainline video games, 8 side games, over 20 novels, several web series, and a narrative podcast, and an ARG, and an animated film. Yes, there's a lot of media with it. And it's surprised that there's now a show. Finally, a show. Granted, there's also movies, but I like to say they do count. It's just that having a grand show that talks about the entire show, especially when it comes to Master Chief, because the other media focuses on not his plight, but other things related to it, there was a bit of hope. But I guess that's what people think. I mean, hearing about it, it was interesting, but I figured that they're just Other ways you could just learn about Master Chief in the Halo universe. You really don't need a TV series to do it. So I'm pretty satisfied with this show coming out. But just the fact that they just came out, it was a thing. I'm indifferent. But I do like to say it is a funny time seeing how people have a plight over this business. Halo, the Paramount Plus TV show, doesn't successfully adapt any of these versions of Halo, nor does it manage to be a coercive narrative on its own terms. By the end of the show's first season, barely any plot threads are legitimately resolved, character arcs are left hanging, and basic facts about the setting are left wholly unanswered, and not because they are mysteries, but because the show cannot properly acclimate its own world. The show's central conflicts for both its characters and its fractional politics are never properly presented or even justified. It is, in most ways, a failure. Yeah, that's pretty much the case. Because in particular, there's things that people point out, and it's just contrivance things. The series takes place in its own timeline, dubbed the Silver Timeline, named for Spartans of Silver Team K125, Vanek 134, Rez 028, and John 117. The Master Chief. From its first episode, the show diverged sharply from the established narrative of the games, both in terms of an exact setting established and how it frames Chief within the setting and develops its story. The games themselves and the expanded universe around them depicted a clash between the rational, practically hard sci-fi archetypes of the UNSC, embodied by the Chief and its super AI companion Cortana, and the magical mysticism of the Covenant and their understanding of the history of the galaxy. This TV show embraces the magical and prophecy completely, and turns Chief himself into a character who understands himself and his purpose through the lens of magic. Nor does it stop there. The entire world of the show could be described as placing a sci-fi veneer over a fairly rodent fantasy novel repeated with an evil wizard and her malevolent helper, a coven of witches guarding the secret to a magical nexus, an orphan child who discovers the destiny of her bloodline, a mysterious bandit with a parrot that is as gold as a treasure he claims motivated him. Really, we could do this all day. The problem is that for all the ponderous world building the series attempts to build around these stock characters, it never really resolves it into much more than archetypes, and the mystical elements end up driving the plot forward more than anything else in the story, supplying the motivation and direction that scant characters do not. That's the thing about characterizations where it comes to even stereotypism, and that can bring things an issue, a forefront issue. It in opening episode, a group of insurrections on the planet Madrigal gathered. Magical, magical. So it's like Madrid, but it's Driggle, similar to. Yeah, man, I can actually think about the place in Spain right now. Gil. You know what? I'm gonna search it because this damn place in Spain, I always keep on forgetting that exists, and when it comes to pronouncing it, it is a trouble with me to say. Gibraltar. 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 Yeah. It's a mix of Madrid and Gibraltar in Spain to Madrigal gather to gamble and tell ghost stories about their battles against the UNSC. They are dusted, covered, and wear impossibly layered garments of brown and orange because they are a desert planet, and this is how you know that they are poor. Yeah, it's weird saying because it does seem like they're wearing custom Mongol archetype clothing that Hollywood tries to portray Mongol people wearing, even though it's just stereotypical. There's the fact that it looks like a bit fake. That's the thing. It looks too clean and too bulky to actually look comfortable for people to wear. But, eh. Their war is never given a proper justification. The show tells us little beyond the fact that they are rebels against the imperialistic government of Earth, but the camera treats them with a tragic respect. It believes that they are the underdogs. They are, by definition, good. It also knows that they will die in the coming scenes, and so it does that what it can be to humanize them. Their tragedy of them being underdogs, but later being just killed off. That's. I mean, if in all the death scenes are just for her to be much more of an interesting character, then that's a lot of sacrifice to put onto one character. That actually makes it pretty sad. Think about it. I don't know. Then a child is blown to pieces by a Covenant Phantom, and the colonists are quickly massacred. This justifies the arrival of the Spartans, who quickly kill the Covenant, leaving only a single survivor, Quan Han, the daughter of the insurrectionist general. During this intervention, Master Chief encounters a mysterious Forerunner artifact and begins being visions of his own childhood, giving him a compulsion to continue communing with the devices. This also seems to move Chief to take Quan under his wing, confessing to her that he killed her mother as part of the UNSC campaign of assassination against the insurrections. Before denying orders from his superiors to kill Quan for her refusal to be a propaganda mouthpiece. Yeah, I'm just coming out from the sickness still, so bear with me. The UNSC immediately turns against Chief for this defiance, but the artifact eventually revealed as only one half of a set of keystones that only blessed ones can operate, which reveal the location of the Halo, awakens and breaks the UNSC control over Chief's spaceship and lets him escape with Quan. Yeah, this sounds like Mass Effect. The first original Mass Effect. They went to a colony area and found an artifact where Commander Shipper actually could be into one of them and start seeing voices and other things, and believed that he was one of the few to access it. So they're not really going into Halo, but they're going more into Mass Effect. Are they being inspired with Mass Effect? I'm just making a show about Mass Effect. That's good to see that rifle. What the hell? This gold ass gun from GoldenEye? Where did that came from? Looks like a Destiny character. This opening episode would appear to establish the NSC as a brutal military regime, one with the insurrections were justified to rebel against. It would suggest that the rest of the show would be interested in the politics which drive this empire, and how the relationship between different human factions is fundamentally altered by the emergence of a Covenant as a significant threat. It would also suggest that the relationship between Master Chief and Quan Han would be a central aspect of the series, yet in the very next episode, Halo rejects this tension completely as Quan Han is separated from Master Chief and left in the care of a former Spartan, Soren 066. From this point forward, the story of Quan Han and the story of Master Chief and the UNSC are wholly disconnected. Quan Han, with the begrudging help of Soren 066, returns to Matricol to attempt to... Well, it sounds like magical, think about it. To attempt to continue her father's revolution. When she arrives, she is told by the father's generals that the revolution is over, and that her father's motivations were not what they seemed. That were his real motivations. Thanks to the tribe of mystics in the desert, Quan learns that her father declared independence from the UNSC not because he had a clear political motivation or desire for a better future, but because a Forerunner AI had given his family a prophecy that it was their duty to protect a Forerunner portal at the bottom of the well. Alright, but Ain't that also another thing that you got to be careful of trying to follow what other alien races follow? Because, the fact that the Covenant wants to annihilate the human race. Uh, well, not using Halo. Because in the game they thought that Halo would just lead to paradise and all stuff, not to annihilate the entire universe, but also, just wipe out any living life like there, especially with humans being such a nuisance. It's just more like, should I actually stick with them? But it does seem that the Forerunners really don't talk about alien threats. Because in the game, there's no other aliens. It's just the Covenant. Where the Covenant is also a mixed race. I don't even think they talk about how the Covenant is like different races. I think they think it's just one race. What the fuck? When given the opportunity to explore the complex relationship between an empire at war and its unwilling subjects, Halo chose to make that story about an ancient prophecy relevant on every sci-fi writing shorthand in the book, from the desert mystics to the custom design and the villainous governor of magical. Juan Han's half of his narrative is a collection of a shorthand. It's stuck. Shoot. Halo chose to make that story about an ancient prophecy relevant on every sci-fi writing shorthand in the book, on the desert mysticals to the custom design and the villainous governor of magical. Quan Han's half of the narrative is a collection of shorthand plot devices with no emotional or intellectual foundation. It is a vapid and empty plot line, and it constitutes almost half of the show's total runtime. Seriously? Well, it does seem like it started branching off more than Master Chief. Hmm. Is this the reason why he had to start stripping out? To see that Master Chief is in these scenes? Just to know what cars we're following? Oh, look. He's just mind his business for some reason. The other half of the show is given over the Master Chief and his special place within mad scientist Catherine Halsey Spartan 2 program. The Spartan 2 program was a UNSC project intended to create the strongest soldiers possible to be deployed against insurrections and special operations. They entered the combat at age 15 after being kidnapped, trained, and experimented upon by Dr. Halsey. At age 5, these kidnapped children were replaced with Flash clones designed to die in a few months. So they're going to. It seems like they're not mentioning much about the other or Halo media, especially in the games. You're just talking about the rest of the show. Okay. Alright, let me try to spit this out. Nah, still stuck there. Alrighty. The Spartan 2s are unfalingly loyal to Dr. Halsey, raised, traumatizing, and indoctrinating them as mother, commander, and scientist. The relationship is not only complex but deeply manipulative. The problem is that the show does not have the time to actually show how this relationship developed or how it lets her control her children, soldiers. Instead, it's introduced as emotional drips that is implanted in each of the Spartans that seals in all of this conditioning. Naturally, that cork is getting propped. Yeah, which is strange because in the franchise, it also shows that it does get corked too, but over time, where people realize, oh, it's actually pretty fucked up that you did all this and stuff like that just to make me a child soldier. Why, Dr. Halsey? Why, Mother Halsey? And then that subsidized. But it seems like they're rushing things where there's this MacGuffin where they're just controlled like little brain insects. At least, yeah, there actually are mentioning some parts in the show where in canon they actually talked about little by little what happened in the franchise versus in this show. But now we know that this is from a different timeline. Um, so they're just not making this canon anymore. Eh, it's probably some multiverse stuff. Is Doctor Strange going to come in? That'd probably make the show interesting. Upon removing the hormonal suppressant, Master Chief begins to experience the full range of human emotion for the first time, spurring him to leave the base and explore Reach City. The following scene is corny. Yeah, I can't get my mind. Is Reach City supposed to be Alexandria from Planet Reach? But you just wanted to know. Okay, whatever. It's just like Salt Lake City, Utah. We just have to know that this city is like salty. But effective as Master Chief's lessons and all to music for the first time to quickly move character arcs forward, K125 witnesses Master Chief remove his hormonal suppressant and decides to follow suit. Her reaction is much more intense, leading her to dye her hair and with gun grease, become an impulsive fighter and show off, and leads her to begrudgingly obey orders from Miranda Keyes, Hasley's daughter and scientific officer, which is much more loyal to the UNSC as out of a misguided application of the morality that her mother lacks. Hey, so that's where she is. Kay and Keyes have the best chemistry in the entire show. And I would prefer to get more time with them than have gotten to Coin Hans, not actual Revolution Power Hour. Okay, well, sure, but yeah, it just seems like she's just having a fun drive where she's just trying to fund her own revolution and stuff like that. Yeah, having two characters, so it's much better than that. The relationship between Kay and Keyes is arguably the high point of the show's acting and writing. Keyes, the biological daughter of Halsey, and Kay, her precious kidnapped science experiment, had an extended conversation about the relationship to Halsey, during which Miranda learns for her mother's cruelty and Kai realizes for the first time just how much Hazel. Hazel. I am confused now with the names. I am confused with the show. The show's making me confused with reading. Halsey. Well, also English is a bit of a strange language, especially names. Just how much Halsey traumatized her as a child. It is one of the few scenes in the show where it feels like the characters left it changed. Sadly, this is a show about Master Chief, and so this handful scenes become a fleeting glimpse into a better television show. Yeah, you know what? Let me skip this because when we were starting to blow Master Chief, what the hell? Yeah, I just started seeing the pictures and stuff like that. You know what? Seeing this, like her and I having a connect, and she looks like a pinhead, and she's getting really excited with Forerunner technology, just like the prophets. That's just. It does show that the person actually does have a good point of view. So, you know what? Let me actually skim through this and let me just tell you some of the rest of the highlights because, going through the rest of the show and just telling me about some characters and plot points, I don't care much about plot points. Okay. Yeah, Evil Empire, all stuff. Good characters, good man. Woman getting excited. Okay. Ew, cool. Yeah. Okay, yeah, then it talks about back to the TV show and stuff like that. Yeah, it talks about their religious order and stuff like that, more like when it's doing the show, especially with what they think of Halo and stuff like that. While the government are meant to feel alien, though their technology, the language is rarely used to exorcise them. Yeah. I don't really see much of the aliens in these thumbnails. So they disappear, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually Doctor. Fake characters and polite lines of magical are not just a bad TV, but the direct products of this ideology. Yeah. And then, it talks about many things, but like that. I mean, it keeps talking about how the UNCC really sucks, but I mean, parts of it does. Organizations is. I mean, especially Oni. Oni, in its purpose, when it started expanding how big bad it is to show how the UNSC is pretty corrupt and how it has really bad actors. And, Master Chief actually knows about this. Good members in the UNSC actually know about this. And when it came to the Covenant, to remnants of it, along with Arbiter, when the Covenant just flashed, pretty much it was a federation that ceased to exist when the prophets die, and then later on all these species started working together, started sectioning on, grouping off. The ones with the Arbiter and some of the alien species, especially the elites, migrated to be part of helping the UNSC, but it's only the part where the people are good and they know that Oni is a threat. Everybody knows that Oni sucks, and that's the point. It's to know that UNSC and parts of it sucks, and we have something to look at. But everybody is still good. Well, yeah, I mean, looking through that, I want to read for this because, yeah, he actually does explain it. Well, good. Okay, I only have a minute left. The first 5 Halo games focus exclusively on the Human Covenant War. Halo Reach depicts the most pivotal moment in the first part of the war, when the Spartan training facility on the planet Reach falls to Covenant invasion before being collapsed. Halo Combat Evolved depicts humanity's first serious contact with the Forerunner artifacts and the Flood. Following allowed them to understand why the Covenant wants them dead. Halo 2 focuses on the latter years of the war, where Master Chief begins turning things into UNSC favor, while the Covenant begins experiencing an internal conflict known as the Great Schism. Halo 3 ODST depicts the war on Earth through the eyes of the regular soldiers as opposed to Spartans. Halo 3 depicts the final year of the war, which ends the death of final Covenant leader and the destruction of the Halo installation. Oh, yeah, I just want to make sure I just don't lose my voice while doing the whole thing. Alrighty, and yeah, that does show how this person does know a lot about the games, and how the show doesn't go forward with it. It makes a spiel about a lot of other things the show wants to really put, but it's not much. Even shows in the very end. The UNSC is bad, but not all in the ways that matters. In the end, there are aliens to fight. Showing that they still want to continue this, but not entirely. It's just a different show, different feel, different things. And yeah, it is a interesting sci-fi show that tries to mimic Halo's universe, but not quite. It's a strange multiverse show. Now, get back to rating again. Anywho, aloha.